Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. Justin Baker. Wait, right there. Yeah. Watch the software swap us. Justin Baker, Mark Paul, we're joining you here. We are knee deep in summer, and we have finally figured out a way to to make an episode happen where we can talk about free agency. We're just going to jump right in because there's been a ton that's happened. We want to talk winners, we want to talk losers, but before we do that, how's your summer going so far, Justin?
Yeah, knee deep in ball sweat right now.
Oh my.
It's for sure. It's been muggy here lately in Michigan.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah,
A lot of
but
rain. Did you guys get like 3.5 inches like we did up here?
not that much, but we got quite a bit though.
Yeah, it was. We got three. A couple, maybe 10, 15 miles east of us got five.
Oh
I
God.
saw some of the streets were just like right in front of people's houses, their driveway covered in water and all sorts of stuff. So I am glad to be
Sucks.
not one of those people. But yeah, maybe some of the NHL free agency losers are currently sitting in a driveway full of water because that may be the way that it looks for some teams right now. Particularly, can we just start with the Carolina Hurricanes?
Oh yeah, I like that
Because
one.
is there a team on July 1st that got worse than the Carolina Hurricanes?
That got worse. I might go Winnipeg, but no, I think you got to go. I think you got to go Carolina.
Yeah, I could see Winnipeg. Winnipeg got lost a good amount of their depth, their kind of their maybe 4 or 5 defensemen with Nate Schmidt going and Brendan Dillon leaving. Carolina just got hit hard. Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, Jake Gensel, Tara Vinen, and Stefan Nosen all gone. And what they brought in, they did manage to re-sign Jordan Martinook and Jakob Slavin. They bring in Shane Gostisbehere, who had a nice little season for Detroit. I'll give him that. And Sean Walker, who was really good for Philadelphia and really not good for Colorado. And then they go and grab Jack Roslovic, William Carrier, Eric Robinson, and Tyson Jost. So it seems like they traded a lot of pretty solid players for guys that were the scraps of free agency. Is that a fair assessment? They got the scraps?
They got scraps. Yeah, Yeah, you know what? It was funny because being a Detroit fan, I was watching the Shane Gostisbehere one pretty closely. Rumor was Eiserman was working it, and he was probably going to get this guy re-signed. And I thought he fit in very well in Detroit. Right, he was great being a third pairing guy, not a lot of responsibility, and he worked well as the top power play guy.
Seemed like
But
he liked being there too.
yeah, why wouldn't you? They have good young talent.
Yeah, my guess is the reason that he went to Carolina was these spots just opened up. That means we know Orlov, Slavin, Burns, but there's some room there. He slots in as the fourth defenseman if Sean Walker doesn't cut it. He gets $3.2 million. He also gets it for 3 years. That may have been the stopping point for Detroit.
Yeah, I think
Because
so.
yeah, Gostisbehere had a nice season last year, but let's take a look at the last 3 seasons before that and then average them out amongst those 4 seasons. And you're not looking at a $3.2 million player. Yes, he absolutely bought himself a nice cushy contract from Carolina. It's funny to me the players that Carolina is unwilling to pay, like an extra $700,000, and yet they're willing to go out and get people's scraps. It's not that Gostisbehere is a bad defenseman. He'll do fine on their power play. It sort of replaces the missing pieces on the power play. And I'm not excited about Jack Roslovic at all.
No,
I think we know what he is, and he's just a fine player. He's a third line. I don't see Jack Roslovic as anything more than that.
guy.
Third line center, and he's never going to score you any goals. He's not moving the needle, especially in
Well,
comparison to the guys that they lost.
that's the thing, right?
Nobody wants to be like, people like to play there. People like the area, but I don't think they like ownership. I think they think their ownership's cheap.
Yeah, we're spiteful, right? You look at what they did with you, right? The offer sheet there. So,
And that worked out so well.
did it ever? But here's the thing, though.
Ooh.
I wonder though with like guys like Brady Shea, Brett Pesci, I have no doubt they're good players, but I often wonder with the system they have, maybe they just said, you know what, we could freaking go out and get anybody with Rod Brind'Amour's system and plug them in, and they're gonna do well. So maybe they're
Yeah,
just cocky.
yeah, I guess that's yeah, I guess that's a better place to be. Is cocky over people don't want to come there, but it just felt like the Hurricanes really did not do themselves any favors. And you're looking at Rod Brind'Amour, I think, came out and was like, it's really hard to see those guys go, right? Like he's been a coach there. I think this is upcoming is his 7th year, and he's had Slavin, he's had Pesci the whole time. He had Brady Shea, what 4 of those years. Uh, Tuvo Teravainen, they grabbed him out of Chicago after Chicago was winning cups, and he's been there ever since. Like a lot of these guys are players that have played for Rod Brind'Amour that honestly kind of expected some of them to go, I don't want to leave because I love playing for him so much. That didn't happen. Carolina's cheap. Maybe people don't like playing for him as much as they say. There's no other way to look at it. When you replace guys who've been there for 7 years that can score 30 goals with guys that barely can score 15, it's going to be a problem. I think right now, and Carolina really did nothing to address the biggest elephant in the room, and that's their goaltending situation. Like how they can go back with Frederik Andersen and have guys trust him. I just don't know. I don't know how they can at this point. Not that
Eh,
he's a terrible regular season goalie, but
no, but they still have a chip to play here with Martin Nicias, right?
yes.
With him, you maybe could move him and try to get a goaltender back, but really all the goaltenders who bring any kind of value, move the needle, they're all collected, swooped up, so they're not available anymore.
Also, you're not trading Martin Necas for a goalie.
No, absolutely
There's
not.
no one out there that is going to match the same value that Martin Necas can provide. Martin Necas is going to arbitration. And given this team's just desire to go with numbers, it makes sense that they would, hey, if you're not going to sign for our number, we're going to arbitration and we're going to tell them exactly what we told you. They're going to hope that they hit on the number they're looking for. I One can only guess what Carolina actually is offering Martin Necas. I imagine that they would like to get him on a little bit longer of a deal. His last deal, 2-year deal for $6 million, a cap hit of 3, and his qualifying offers for 3.5. There's no way that he's only getting 3.5 in this next deal. So now the question is, how much does that end up being? Is it 6 to 7 million a year? That would be my guess. That's where it's going to slot in.
I could see that, and to be quite honest, I think at this point the relationship's a little fractured. I think they're just going to move him. They may
Okay.
get him signed for a year, so a team has the contract already done and they don't have to worry about it. But he's gone.
Okay. Yeah. And so at that point, you're probably still looking for another forward with Martin Necas, given the forwards that walked out the door for the Carolina Hurricanes. And that's where it gets hard. Can we sidebar for a moment?
Let's sidebar. Yeah,
It's very difficult to navigate Puckpedia versus Cap Friendly.
it is a little bit more difficult.
I'm looking at it, and you scroll down on a guy's actual uh, player card, right? Hey, here's how much he's making, and there's no statistics. Like,
Yes,
oh, there, yeah. So you have to find it and click it and open it up. It's there. It just is. It's a little convoluted for me. I appreciate that there is still something else out there because Cap Friendly going away obviously leaves a big hole. My guess is that Puckpedia is tripled in people visiting the website. If
oh,
you don't know, you can go to puckpedia.com, and that's where we get much of our contract information now because capfriendly.com was sold to the Washington Capitals. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Hey, if you started a website and everybody used it, and then someone said, hey, we'll give you $10 million to take your website down, you might go, okay. Oh, and by the way, we'll give you a job and we'll pay you X amount a year. You'll go, okay.
I am more than positive they probably could have went and shop that website around a little bit if people had known this is available for sale because of the traffic they do, right? They get exposure. Every insider is always, oh yeah, thanks to Puck Pete or thanks to
For a
Cat
cap,
Friendly,
yeah.
yeah, on
Yep.
Twitter or X, whatever. They're always a shout out there from those guys. So the just the marketing, the traffic they get, they could have found a buyer for, I'm sure, whatever Washington paid them for it.
I'm sure they asked around, I would guess, but yeah, it's gone. And it is Puckpedia is at this point the best option. I was like, how do I make my own cap friendly? Did you know those guys went to the draft themselves, sat at the draft, and make their own? They populate everything live at the draft. It was a bunch of brothers that worked together.
Oh wow.
Like those guys worked their butts off. Like anytime there'd be a trade, we do this. We've been doing the show for 7 years. If there's a trade, before we even find out about the trade, it's already updated in cap friendly every time.
Yep.
No question about it, every time. And I hope that Puckpedia ends up being really good, or somebody else makes something really great. That there's some competition out there, but it is taking. I feel like an old man being like, these young whippersnappers making a new website, and I can't figure it out. But that's how I feel about Puckpedia right now. But I'll get used to it. I've only been using Cap Friendly for however long it's been in existence. I've been there, so
Yep.
sorry. Back to winners and losers in free agency. Carolina, a pretty clear loser. What was the other team that you mentioned that you thought was a big loser?
Oh, Winnipeg. Yeah.
Winnipeg, yes.
Oh goodness. To me, the biggest reason, yes, losing Nate Schmidt, Brendan Dillon were two big keys to lose, especially at the defensive depth that they bring and the actual defensive side of the puck that they bring. But for me, the bigger loss was the fact that you lost Sean Monahan to the Columbus Blue Jackets. To me, that just kind of seems insulting that you couldn't figure that one out and Columbus swooped in and got him. No offense, but I thought Sean Monahan fit like a glove with that second line there. He looked phenomenal. And what, you couldn't match that offer to bring him in? I don't
Yeah,
get it.
4 years at 5.5 million. It's a lot for a guy who, again, much like Gostisbehere, where you look at, last year he had a great year before. He's 17 points in 22-23, and then, 59 last season with 26 goals. The year before he had 6 goals. In 21-22, he had 8 goals. 2020-2021, he had 10. So I don't know. I don't hate it. I don't hate them holding off on Monahan, even though, yes, he was a good fit. But 4 years at $5.5 million for a guy who the last 3-4 seasons, he had 3 seasons before this one, he had 24 goals. He scored 26 this year. Like, he scored more goals this year than he had in the previous 140 games. So, yes, great on him. 83 games he played this season. He had 26 goals, but in 140 games before that, he only had 24. I wonder if he comes back down to earth a little bit. I know there was some injury issues there. Calgary was a little strange. I know there were some other factors, but I don't know if I'm willing to invest in him for 4 more years. I
Okay,
get it. I
maybe,
get it
maybe not.
for the next season. Like, he was a good fit. You are absolutely correct. He was a great fit. But are you willing? Do you think as Winnipeg, are you winning the cup this next year? I guess
Maybe.
maybe that's the bigger question. What is Winnipeg? What do they do?
Okay, so you look at Winnipeg as far as where they fit in terms of the Central Division, and yes, Colorado, Dallas, they're going to be above them. And I think after free agency, maybe you have to put Nashville above them now. I don't know.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. You've got those three teams ahead of you at least, right? At the very least. But to me, I still think they're a playoff team, and I think with the goaltending they have given, I know he shit the bed this last playoff. Connor Hellebuyck is still a Vezina winner, and I still think you have enough pieces up front, especially in that top six with Kyle Connor. I don't know where Ehlers is, if he's going to be back next season or if they're going to move him. But you've got Gabe Velarde coming back for a full season now. There's good pieces there, right? And so to me, they're still a contender. They're still a team that can come in that system with that head coaching they have over there to compete. If you look at it from Sean Monahan's perspective, okay, cool. You know what? Maybe I'm going to get another year out of my contract to go to Columbus, right? Yes, maybe I get to go play with Johnny Gaudreau again. Maybe I can kind of reignite a little bit of what I had in Calgary during my 82-point season, but I'm further away from the Stanley Cup than I was, and I don't see Columbus getting back anytime in the next couple of years. What good is that extra fourth year if I'm still scratching at the playoffs?
That's yep, absolutely true. Absolutely true. One thing that we didn't mention, Winnipeg coming in with, I know not necessarily a new coach because he's been there for the last 2 seasons as an associate coach, but Scott Arniel, now the head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. So I mean that could also play a factor. You go, I don't I really liked, oh my gosh, why can't I think of his name now, who the coach was before? Came from Dallas, of course, but uh am I are the wheels churning right now?
Oh, just, oh gosh, why can't I think of who the coach was?
Yep,
Oh no,
it's gone.
now I'm
It's
blanking.
summertime. Anyways, it'll come up. Your coach leaves, and maybe that's who you associate your success with, and you go, "It's time for me to move on." I didn't really connect with Scott Arniel. Could be some of the factor. Uh, yes, but the Jets, hey, they have Connor Hellebuck, and they whenever you have a Vezina Trophy winner, you can always count yourself at least in the playoff race. I think that's probably where Winnipeg belongs, is somewhere in the wild card conversation. I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know that they got better, but what we have seen from Winnipeg is a willingness to go out and trade for the pieces that they need mid-season. Like we've seen it several years in a row. We saw it a lot with Peter Stastny. We see it with Sean Monahan. We see them make those moves for that second line center to kind of shore things up, and it makes them get through. So I will say they did get worse, but it's not that much worse to where they're so far down the chute. Who's your winner? Toss some winners out to me because I think I just actually I just want to talk about Detroit
okay.
because they are absolutely one of my winners. I know Patrick Kane was there last year, but it was looking like he was gone, and then things turned around, and he ends up signing, and then you're like, okay, great, the Wings signed Patrick Kane again. That's nice, and you're waiting around, and then they go out and sign Tarasenko, who's won 2 Stanley Cups out of the
Yep.
last 5 teams to win the cup. He's been on 2 of them. It's not so bad.
Not so bad. And they don't overpay for him, in my opinion, either, right? 4.75 for a 30 goal scorer who can still play in your top six. I still think he has enough to offer. He's still fast enough and he plays physical. He can, and then we also saw last season with Florida, if you move him down the lineup and ask him to play a more responsible game, he can do that still.
Yeah, he was really good for Florida. I think his playoff was fine. I think he had some good games. I don't know if I'm going out on a limb and saying that he wasn't the reason that Florida won the Stanley Cup by any means, but he was good when he needed to be. He
Yeah.
contributed throughout their run. The nice thing in Detroit, no offense to Detroit, I don't think that they're in a position to do what Florida just did, go on a Stanley Cup run. The next 2 years, probably not going to see them in the Stanley Cup finals. Doesn't mean that they're not going to make the playoffs. I think they did themselves a lot of favors here, and hey, their forward group looks pretty good. And I thought about this today. Tarasenko comes from the Florida Panthers. And what team does it appear that Detroit is modeling their rebuild after? I would argue that it's the Florida Panthers.
Okay.
Yzerman has been, yes, he's done a decent job drafting players. Yes, Dylan Larkin has been a Red Wing his whole entire career, and there's Moritz Seider who's there. There's Lucas Raymond. There are some Simon Edvinsson who will likely see time with the Red Wings this year. Should hopefully be a starter and be up at the big club the whole entire time. So they have players on their roster that they drafted, but at the same time, they're going out into free agency. They got Comfer and Kopp and DeBrincat via trade. They signed Tarasenko and Kane. Christian Fisher comes in via free agency. Tyler Mott. I know Daniel Sprong's gone now, or it looks like he will be. But and then half their defensive core, most of their defensive core is just from wherever they could pluck them. This team is built a lot like the Florida Panthers, where they didn't build through the draft. Very little. Yes, Ekblad, Barkov, the rest of them were just acquired via trade or free agency. And that, I think, is what made the Panthers so unique. And it appears that Yzerman may have taken a book from Dale Talon.
I mean, you could make that argument, and I think I don't necessarily think he's doing it out of just modeling, because we know that a lot of times the NHL is a copycat league, right? Whoever won the cup, let's do what they did. But I think the Red Wings are doing it out of necessity, more or less. Like, they've got a lot of young, very young talent coming up, and who are going to be good, but they need to buy some time, right? And bring in guys to help make this team competitive until these guys are ready to go. And Nate Danielson might make the team this year. We don't know yet. And same with Marco Kasper. There's guys there that could potentially come up. So we'll see. But yeah, I think the reason I would consider and agree with you that Detroit is a winner, not only Tarasenko, but I am glad that, of course, losing Shane Gostisbehere was kind of a bummer. But I think replacing him with Eric Gustafsson at $2 million at 2 years was a good signing. They don't
Yeah,
overpay
he's a
for a
role
guy.
player.
Yeah, good player. He's always had, if you go look at his numbers, especially during his time with his pin and the Rangers, he had good Corsi numbers. He's put up decent offensive numbers. If you shelter him on a third pairing and then you rotate him in on that second power play, or maybe even give him some first PP time, he's going to do pretty good.
I do like that you said PP time, but yeah, hey, he does have a 60-point season.
He does in Chicago, yeah.
In Chicago. He's a good offensive defenseman.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, it's a good replacement for cheap. And they did pretty well bringing in Cam Talbot as well. I like the
I like that.
signing. I think that hey, nobody wants Billy Huso. No need to buy him out. You're not in that position. You might as well see if you can get him to play the way that you think he can when you acquired him from Carolina. And if he can't, it's fine. You bury him, you use Lions, and then you have your Talbot Lions, which is not an awful tandem. But if Huso can find his way, you've got 3 solid goalies. And what do we see from so many of these teams? You need 3 goalies. 2 goalies doesn't cut it anymore, because one of your goalies is going to go down for probably more than 5 games at a time.
That was the Red Wings last year. Huso.
It's happening to everybody.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense to do what they're doing. And hey, I can't hate the toss out to Jack Campbell to say, come here. Let's see if you can find yourself in Detroit, away from, not that Detroit is not, of course, it's hockey town. People love their hockey, but there's not going to be the same kind of pressure in Detroit that there was in Edmonton. In Edmonton, he was a complete and utter failure. Like maybe the greatest failure of any signing ever in the history of the Edmonton Oilers.
That's rough.
Find me a way.
Okay.
If you're watching this, think of a worse signing that the Edmonton Oilers made, something that affected them more, that went more poorly. So find me one and I'll recant. But
okay, I'm game to try that one. But
I will prove you wrong.
But I'll tell you what's nice for Detroit, right? You talk about those goalies, by the way, just go back and maybe think about Mikko Koskinen a little bit. So with Jack Campbell, you get a good piece, a guy who has had a lot of time, obviously, in the NHL, but now he can go down. He had some good numbers in the AHL last year with Edmonton when he did get finally sent down. But you've got a young guy in Sebastian Cossa who isn't quite ready for the NHL yet. And I think having a guy like Jack Campbell to kind of mentor him and teach him the ropes is going to be good for him. And then say Campbell does find his game down there, he looks good. You've got an asset you can move at the deadline to a team that maybe wants a third goaltender.
Hey, 3rd round pick, something like that you scoop up for really nothing. $775K. Exactly. And he probably helps you win some games in the AHL, or God forbid you get down to your 4th goalie and you have to use them.
That has happened.
Yeah, it has definitely happened. Okay, Detroit, definitely a winner on deadline day. We have already mentioned the Nashville Predators, but I think it behooves us to talk about the Preds, because they have the biggest signing of free agency day. Maybe the best player to change teams in a while. Can we think of a bigger superstar that went, okay, I guess I'm leaving, and went to a totally different team? After being with the Tampa Bay Lightning since 2008, he goes and signs with the Predators. 16, 17 seasons for Stamkos, and Tampa just unwilling to give him that extra year.
Yeah, they wanted to give him 8 years at, I think it was $2 or $3 million. But
Cheap bunch of cheap bastards.
yeah, that's the thing. They're like, "Oh, you'll get your money. We'll just put you on IR when you're 40." But what happens if he decides, you know what? 41 years old, I still want to play. Maybe
Yeah.
he's still got something going, so he could go out and get.
Also, you get your money, you can do something with it now, right? You can go and you can invest it, whereas if the team has your money, 2 million now, we've all seen inflation, and not that $2 million has ever been a small amount, but I get it. It's less money that you are getting over those years because of inflation, and because the cap's invariably going to go up, so your percentage of the cap is going to be completely wiped away. Like the minimum salary in the next CBA is probably going to be 1.2, 1.3 million. So we're creeping up to where a $3 million contract is not much. You look at the NBA and stuff, and you're like, "Oh, that garbage player just signed for 15 million bucks a year." Like,
Oh,
it's a different world. But good on Stamkos. He goes somewhere else, and I don't know that anyone has any hard feelings in Tampa Bay. Like, you just kind of have to go. They weren't willing to pay him, and that's that. You can't be mad at Stamkos. You could be mad at Brisebois. And
yeah, you can't blame Stamkos at all for this. Yeah,
if
Uh,
Tampa
what he's
Bay,
done.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say what he's done for that franchise. He'll get his number to the Raptors. He'll get a statue down there. He brought Stanley Cups to that team and just holds every record.
Yep. And if Tampa Bay goes and hey, they signed Jake Gensel, so good on them. They signed a younger. I think what they would say is we signed a younger Steven Stamkos. I like that's got it. Now, not the exact same player, but you signed a high scoring winger, and Jake Gensel had a bigger point production than Stamkos did, and they signed him for $9 million, barely more than what Stamkos got. So in some respects, you look at it and you go, Tampa Bay did pretty well for themselves. They get a guy who is only 29 instead of 34, and just the downside is that his name is Jake Gensel and not Steven Stamkos. He has never bled for the Tampa Bay Lightning, whereas Stamkos has given it all. And to be honest, what are the chances that the Tampa Bay Lightning can go and win another Stanley Cup with this group? I'd say it's pretty unlikely. It's
I don't know
unlikely.
about that.
I
I
think
don't
it's
know.
pretty unlikely.
You got Vassy back there. You've got Hedman still. He's still looking good. And you've got
Yep.
Kucherov, Braden Point. You still got good pieces, man. So I can't
Yeah,
count them out.
I. It's not that they're not going to be good, but I don't know. I don't think this group's winning a cup anymore.
I wouldn't pick them. No, absolutely not. They wouldn't be in my top 3 or 4 teams come playoff time that I think would win a cup. But if they won one, I wouldn't be like, oh, that's a big shocker.
Sure, yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Hey, they go out and they sign Jake Gensel, and that's their replacement for Stamkos. And I don't remember where I was going with this, but that's what happened. Yeah, Nashville though. Let's get back to Nashville. They signed Steven Stamkos, huge signing for them. Maybe the best player they've ever signed in free agency, who was actually likely to repeat the pattern of the past. Like, yes, they had Peter Forsberg, who was unbelievable for them for the 36 games that he got in for them. Like, he didn't play a lot. He was hurt. I can't remember how many games did Peter Forsberg play for the Nashville Predators.
I'm going to look that up.
I am looking it up right now. He played 17 for the Nashville Predators, and he had 15 points. He had 2 goals for the Preds. So, yeah, all right, I gave him too much credit. 17 games. So, yes, he was the biggest signing that franchise had ever had, but he played 17 games. Steven Stamkos, barring some crazy injury, is going to play for 4 years for the Nashville Predators and is going to put up likely around a point per game for at least the first 2 seasons of that deal. He is probably the best free agent signing that franchise has ever had. And hey, all they do is go out and also sign Jonathan Marchessault, who also has a Stanley Cup to his name just 2 years ago. And he only had 69 points and 42 goals last year. They have set themselves up in an unbelievable way. And Barry Trotz, from where they were 2 years ago, It is unbelievable what he's been able to do. Like, we thought Philip Forsberg was going to leave. We thought they'd trade Roman
Mhm.
Yossi. Juicy Saros was supposed to get dealt. And here they are signing Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. And now you look at them, find me 5 better teams in the West. And there's at least going to be a debate about some of them. They
I
also
mean,
signed Brady Shea. Like,
I'll put
they,
Dallas ahead of them right now for sure.
yep, okay,
I could probably still put Vegas in front of them.
yep. Edmonton,
Uh,
I would still put
Edmonton,
ahead of them.
absolutely.
And,
Vancouver, maybe, but
uh,
I don't know.
Vancouver lost a lot in free agency.
They
They
did, but
lost their Elias Lindholm, and they don't have that second line center
Jake
anymore.
DeBrusk bringing him in, that was a
Uh,
good,
Colorado could be maybe the
could be.
one other team, but there you go. Okay, so we struggle to name 5 teams that are better
Yeah.
than them.
Mhm.
Like, they just made themselves legitimately a Stanley Cup contender for the first time in almost 10 years. Like, we thought 2016, 2015 in there, they had legitimate possibility. And this is the first time that I think you could say that again.
Yeah. And
And oh, go ahead.
no, I was going to say I do think an underrated signing that nobody really talks about, given all the talent they just brought in, but nobody really talks much about Luke Shin. I think
Jen.
he's going to be so underrated on that back end for this team. I think it's just he's gonna be a shutdown guy for some of those other defensemen like Dante Fabro and Jeremy Lawson. I think he's just gonna fit in really well with this group.
Yeah, and we also didn't mention Alexander Carrier.
Right.
So there's another. He's coming off of a really good season with the Predators. 50 points in 21-22, 27 last year, 44 the year after. And I just think he just keeps on getting better and better. And yeah, that team, you look at their Yossi Shea, Carrier, Shen, Fabro, Lausen, they have one of the best defenses in the league. It's not just Yossi anymore.
Right. No Yossi. They got rid of McDonough too, which I thought was probably a pretty smart move on their behalf.
Yeah, it's what allowed them to go out and get Marchessault. It basically replaced his salary with Marchessault, and they desperately needed that forward position. Like, their top 6 was really what was probably holding them back. Now they've got Stamkos, Marchessault, 2 guys who I think are real hungry to shove it to the team that let them go.
Absolutely.
Both players are probably going to have their jerseys in the rafters somewhere. It's just not going to be in Nashville. It's going to be somewhere else. But
Right.
maybe they can, I don't know, set things up a little bit for themselves in Nashville. I think
Ooh, I lost your voice. Oh, there you are. Nope, you're gone again. Did I lose you? Uh oh. There he is. Technical difficulties. Okay. 35 minutes. Fun stuff. Oh, I was going to say probably the one guy who, I mean, is going to benefit the most from all this is Tommy Novak. We'll see if this pays off, man. Listen, if Oh, for sure. Absolutely. No doubt. But if they come out and they just can't build the chemistry, maybe you could blame a little bit on coaching. But I think if you look at the signings, he's got Tommy Novak signed for 3 years at 3.5. If he pans out the way I think he will, he could be a 60-point player easily at that money. Fantastic. Ryan O'Reilly already looks like one of the best signings. Yeah, phenomenal, right? And Jonathan Marshall, so you get a 40 goal score at 5.5. Same with Steven Stamkos. So this could look really nice if your top six works out the way I think it will. And of course, bring in Brady Shea to replace that hole that Ryan McDonough left when they moved him out to get that money. He could easily elevate this defense to even higher heights. And then not only that, but you get UC Saro signed to what I think is just a phenomenal EV because you look at what guys like Bobrovsky just winning the Stanley Cup, these top free agent goaltenders could easily go out and say, you know what? You need to pay a goaltender $10 million because you're not going to win one without him. And look at Bobrovsky, and this is what I deserve. Or you could go look at Hollebuck and say, I've been putting up good numbers like him and playing all these games. And what do? I think they maybe use Askarov as a little bit of leverage, but still at $7-ish million, that's pretty. Yeah, he wanted to be there. Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. I've got the Edmonton Oilers. I just think the Jeff Skinner signing alone was just a win right there. I said it in the playoffs, and I think I've mentioned it to you a couple different times, but Leon Draisaitl had nobody to play with on his wing, and now he gets just a pure goal scorer in Jeff Skinner that they could slap on his wing and have him just feeding the puck to Skinner all day long now. 9 million bucks. Yeah, absolutely could. And you could get lucky too and have a bunch of guys in the league just look at him who maybe aren't like projecting him to produce and just say, you know what, he got bought out, he's garbage, so I'm not drafting him. And he falls to round 12, 13, 14, and you pick up this guy and he could be a 30 goal scorer, 40 goal scorer again. Hmm. Yeah, maybe not. They signed their entire third line back again. Henrique, Janmark, Connor Brown. Why not? Why break up the band? They look good in the finals. So, right. Yeah, I'm probably pushing Connor Brown down to the fourth line and putting Evander Kane down there if it's me. Right. Really? Oof. I was gonna say, he's due a ridiculous deal. Ooh. Listen, I think regardless, right? Even if you only put up 70 points, right? Say you maybe have a down year, right? You put up 70 points versus the 82. You're still so valuable to that team in such a way that you can look at Darnell Nurse and be like, I want more than that guy, right? Yeah, I think so. It's I could see a bridge deal where maybe Bouchard says, you know what, I'll take 3 years at 10 million bucks, and then he resigns for in hopes that again, if assuming Drysaitel resigns and McDavid resigns, you could easily cash in another 3 years and then go to 12, 14. It's true. Yeah, that's true. Maybe you're just waiting for Leon Draisaitl re-sign before you can figure out your number, right? Because I think obviously Draisaitl's the priority. I think for this team over Bouchard for sure. Maybe they just want to get that deal done first, and if you're Bouchard, you're just waiting, licking your chops. Dude, did you hear what his agent say? No, so his agent came out and said basically, I don't know the exact words, so I'm kind of paraphrasing, but said, you know what, if we don't have something done by the end of the summer, we're not talking till the end of the year. And it didn't sound very positive as in he'll still resign here kind of thing. Maybe their negotiating tactic, but sometimes. Okay, for sure. But on the flip side of that, if you're okay, say you're Leon Dreisaitl's camp, you came out, you said that, right? If you, as a media personnel, right, or as somebody in the news, if you come to camp or whenever September and he still hasn't signed a deal, this is going to be huge news in Edmonton all season long and something that I don't think that Edmonton wants to deal with. Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think they're just going to have a little sit down this summer and be like, "Hey, do we want to hang out here for another 8 years? Okay, cool. Let's do it." Right. Exactly. Hmm. Yeah. Yep. I don't. I think they're worse. I'm going to go with worse. I think. I So first and foremost, I think the biggest reason why they're going to be worse is now you don't have Allmark Swayman, right? You don't have that duo in there anymore. Now I know Swayman looked much better than Allmark this year, and he had a line share of the games, but I think not having that reliable number two option, that 1A, 1B kind of thing going on, if you have to press on Swayman a little bit more, yes, I think Corpusalo might be all right in that role, but could. Right, exactly. But I just don't think this duo is going to be as good as their last 2 years. And then not only that, but look, I liked Elias Lindholm when he was in the playoffs for Vancouver. I didn't like his regular season. So I don't know which one we're really going to get this year. And you look at his numbers, especially looking at the Corsi over the last couple seasons. Yes, when he was with the Flames in 22, 21, the numbers were good. He put up some decent points. Going to Calgary, obviously in 23, 24, they had good pieces, but it didn't really work out. Vancouver, his Corsi number was just meh. So I see it trending in the wrong direction, really. And to give a guy that much money and that much term, just basically out of desperation because you really needed a center, I'm a little worried about it. And so if he ends up being nothing more than a second line guy, 60 points, right? You basically are replacing what you lost in DeBrusque as far as point production. But yeah, maybe you get a slightly better defensive player, I think, in the long run, but it doesn't. Right. But is he going to be that much better than what they had in Charlie Coyle and gosh, why am I blanking on the name? Pavel Zacha. You have to move Pavel Zacha to the wing, I think, or Elias Lindholm. They tried to put him on the wing in Vancouver initially. Yeah, it was terrible. So you have to play him down the middle. Pavel Zacha has shown he can play the wing, so I think that's probably what they'll end up doing. What happens when, again, you're just getting the same production from Jake DeBrusque that you just lost, and it's are they better for it? I don't think so. I think they'll be slightly worse just because of the goaltending situation, but sure. And Colin Miller, absolutely. His point per games are going down. I think you hit your microphone or your camera again. Hey, there it is. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. No, I agree, and I think they could see an uptick as far as the forward group is concerned with a guy like Matthew Patra or Poitra. I really don't know how to pronounce his last name correctly, but he could be a guy that could help move that needle a little bit and help replace some of that lost production as far as the depth is concerned, right? And now you don't have to what they started the year off doing, forcing him to play in top 6 minutes. Now you can shelter him a little bit more. I think with Elias Lindholm, which could help. But they just didn't do anything to move the needle to me and went out and overpaid, I think, for a guy like Elias Lindholm, which was a concern. Ooh, I love it.